I released the Comprehensive XR Hardware Management Guide, and it's in collaboration with over 10 different companies in the industry. It's very broad. That was just
Yeah.
published like last week. And in addition to that, we also have 2 XR hygiene standards published by ASTM, which is it took only 3.5 years to get these 2
Stand.
published, and I'm hoping that the 3rd one will be published by February, but there's still one pending. But that being said, at IAPA, my team with ASTM F24, which is co-chaired by myself and someone from Universal Studios, we are going to be talking to people in the XR space about how that standard will impact in a positive way. So yes, those
Oh,
are 2
man.
things that are both just happening.
Okay. We'll have to make sure that those get in. And actually, that was a great introduction. Hey, everybody, it's Nathan. Welcome to the Tech Glow Up. Today, we've got our super special episode with the founder and CEO of CleanBox Technology, Amy Hedrick. She's going to talk to us about how she's taken her patent pending UV light sanitation tools into 15 different verticals and how she approaches each of those conversations in a different way. Amy is a multiple patent holder, a early VR entrepreneur, and an ardent supporter of the spatial computing industry. She really sees the work that she's doing as supporting the industry at large by solving one of the main problems that users face when trying to put on face-worn technologies. Sanitation has never been sexier than on the Tech Glow Up. I really appreciate the way that Amy just jumped in with both feet in the spirit of the Tech Glow Up, sharing stories from her long journey as an entrepreneur, as well as sharing great advice for other product leaders and founders to think about in their journey. She also has some exciting new updates that you might just hear here first. Welcome to the Tech Glow Up. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Tech Glow Up. I'm Nathan C., and today I'm talking with Amy Hedrick of CleanBox Technology. Amy, it is so good to talk with you again. Thanks for joining me on the Tech Glow Up.
Nathan, it is always a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh my goodness. You're one of my favorite examples to talk about in immersive technology as well as in innovative technology. I'll let you share your accolades, but like you are literally a patent pending leader in your space. And you embody this idea of in a gold rush, sell shovels. So I would love it if, in your own words, could you please introduce yourself and the work that you do at CleanBox Technology?
Yes, absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. It was great to chat with you as always. The CleanBox Technology, we specialize in rapid UVC LED disinfection. We were founded in 2018, or rather incorporated in 2018. We began our patent filings and R&D before that, 2015 and 2016. And so because of that, we have over 50 global patents in what we do. And yes, innovation is like being the cowboy or the cowgirl in the Wild West. And trust me, I feel like I actually wear that hat for much of my life, certainly with CleanBox. But what we've been focused on innovation, and the reason is that innovation really is a response, to creative response to a challenge that somebody thinks that we could have a solution for. This is a creative response to a challenge. And so that's what CleanBox Technology is. It's a creative response to the challenge and we started with immersive technology. So headsets, when I first started the company, right before I started the company, if you'll allow me to tell the story, right before I started the company, I was doing something along the lines of technology, more on the think tank side of things. And I got to put on an Oculus Rift at Mobile World Congress in 2016, I believe, 15 maybe? Yes, 2015, I believe. So I put on the headset, and to me, it changed my life, because I thought, this is how we learn in the future. This is how we can engage with content And this is fresh of mind, of course, because I have a long standing relationship with the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. And of course, they have 158 million objects in their collection. Phenomenal. And all of those things that teach us about history, science, arts, entertainment, political movements, and all of that content, which is very hard as a single person just by yourself to assimilate that, all that knowledge. So, how do we do it currently? How have we done it? We study books. Maybe we now have a computer. We look at a presentation. But when I put that headset on, I thought this is a way we can experience history. We can experience the moments that led up to why this content matters to us today. And that led me on the start of this journey that I am at today, solving a very practical problem, maybe not necessarily the magic that I knew this technology was capable of providing. Other people are providing that, but I am solving an adoption challenge with what we do with CleanBox Technology.
I did not know that you had the content inspiration to finding your path in the space. This idea of this content could be so powerful, but there's an ick factor if you're sharing with a bunch of early adopter VR fanatics.
Absolutely. Well, definitely my life story is take the road less traveled, which I certainly continue to do. With that being said, fits well with my personality to say, okay, what could go wrong? What are the barriers of entry? And then past that, what are the barriers of adoption? And then past that, what are the barriers to scalability? And when you think about things in those terms, suddenly innovation becomes a really critical part of how you embrace the future.
I love that there's this sort of near, short, far that scales with this idea of innovation. Amazing. I think you actually really did a great job of talking about the nexus of CleanBox technology. Uh, was CleanBox was that your origin as an entrepreneur, or like others, did you start much earlier?
I've always probably had a little bit of that entrepreneur craziness in my life. This is definitely the first hardware company I started, and it is certainly not something I probably dreamed of doing when I was 10 years old. I had big aspirations and ambitions, and I have my whole life. But I think the one thing that's important to think about that in terms of innovation is it's great to have a plan, and I'm definitely a planner, and I like to strategize things because I like to optimize and streamline and think, okay, what could prevent me from getting from here to there in the time that I want to take? And let me just eliminate those things. But it's also important to recognize that sometimes the path doesn't go that way when you thought it did. Sometimes it just goes this way. And if you see an opportunity and think, maybe I should consider that path, your life might change and you might be in for a lot of surprises. But it's a very interesting and exciting path. And certainly I would not be here today if I was not so inclined to take those risks.
You teased a question that's a little bit ahead of where I'm at. Uh, but this idea of as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, you're often past where there are maps. And so on your journey, you might encounter either roadblocks or just challenges or potentially opportunities that you were not planning for.
Mhm.
So I'd love it maybe if you can talk about, and with an example, if you have one, of how you like to respond to opportunities and challenges when you like learn that maybe the path or the industry or consumers aren't quite what you had understood earlier on.
I would say that there are always unexpected challenges, I would imagine, in every business. But when you're coming into two nascent spaces, because the use of UVC technology in an LED was quite nascent, still quite nascent today, but certainly when we started all of our R&D, the reason that have been able to grow so much in this space is because we were very early on. I like to say two things. One, ignorance is bliss, and two, knowledge is power. And if you don't have a nice little mixture of ignorance and knowledge, that ignorance being bliss helps keep that vision alive. So when you hit your head against the brick wall, you're like, that was just a brick wall. Let me try this again. Let me try it another way. Let me continue to move forward, because you really do need to hold on to that mindset of this is innovation. It's not a straight path. We've got a few challenges that we're not going to have any clue what they will be. And we can't prepare then in terms of how to respond to them. So how do you respond when those challenges hit you? First of all, you try to okay, hit my head against the wall. Let me regain my composure quickly. And then let me think about, okay, why? And what would prevent a different outcome when I try this again? So what do I need to tweak? Is it little? Is it big? Is it everything? Or is it nothing?
I have to tell you, that feels really prescient right now. And it feels good to hear. I just did a bunch of interviews as I was telling you about. And so frequently, like this idea of grit and resolve and persistence came up. I love this idea that there is a founder's bliss or an entrepreneur's bliss, right? Because you get to be exploring and discovering these ideas so early, and that in its own is like absolutely part of the joy of that journey. That
And you know what?
reminders.
Founders need to hear people like yourself remind them that's part of the bliss. That's part of the journey. Because it is very easy to forget in the drama of business and entrepreneurism and changing industries, because this is one industry, but it's not one industry, is it? I'm 15 industries automatically with my company. When we first started selling product, we were immediately in 15 different industries. For a normal business, that would be 15 different go-to-market strategies, 15 different teams that focus on different messaging and just different, like, how do you respond to a customer's request for product changes? How do you even know how healthcare is going to be different from automotive, which is going to be different from entertainment? And how can you manage that in an inflexible object, which hardware is a bit inflexible when you compare it to like software? And how do you address not only the actual deliverable to the customer, but how that customer thinks about that deliverable? Because if you haven't made or built a product before, you're not really going to know what it takes to build one.
Oh, you touched on so many. Just first off, bless you for working in hardware. Like you said, it is
Like,
a lot of folks get into computer science because they can do it at home just on a laptop. But there's storage constraints, like there are all of these supply chain. I could imagine in some cases, like global negotiations about rare earth metals might impact the next 2 or 3 years of what you're up to. And that's an incredible amount of complexity. Um, you teased this thing out. You said most orgs, if they ended up in 15 different verticals, that's 15 different teams, go to markets, etc. I feel like there's a follow-up to that because do you have to work at that complexity, or is the nature of your product and this like clean box that like sanitizes almost anything in a minute, does that just sell itself when people see it or encounter the conversation? Do you have
yes
to
and no.
be?
Yes and no, and everything in between. Yeah. So there are two ways to answer that question. The first is immersive technology itself as an industry, but as a tool, let's just say, because yes, industry is sounds big and great, but to be honest, it's a very siloed and very fragmented industry to this day. And I think it's better, for at least from my perspective on this call, to talk about it as a tool. So how is immersive technology a tool in healthcare? How is it a tool in education? How is it a tool in entertainment? And what does that tool accomplish? So when you think about it that way, for the content creator, of course, that is multiple different paths. For us, though, on the hardware side, it's okay. You now have finally understood how to take this tool. This tool can help your business. Now, what do you need to get people to use the tool? How do you maintain the tool? How do you promote the tool? And then how do you take this beautiful new thing that you've created and helped create because you have a vision? And how do you make sure that the rest of your business and then subsequently the rest of your industry benefits from that? So when it comes to all dialing all the way back to CleanBox, how do we address multiple industries with selling our product? Nothing ever sells itself. We'll start there. Because if you've got to watch an advertisement for mayonnaise on TV, I'm pretty sure mayonnaise has been around for a while. No, I know I'm oversimplifying this. However, you just do still see people selling mayonnaise on an advertisement. Okay, that means that messaging still matters and should never be taken for granted. Number one. Number two, what are you selling? Are you selling the sandwich or are you selling the mayonnaise? You're selling the sandwich. So let's just think about what's it going to take to get the whole picture in there. Nobody just wants to buy some mayonnaise and leave it in their fridge. They might want to think about, they might buy that mayonnaise when they're thinking about building a sandwich later on. And I guess I'm tying two analogies maybe loosely together here. But the point is like when you think about how do you sell a product like CleanBox, which is a piece of hardware, it's a disinfection device. We've made it look as beautiful and aesthetically pleasing as and simple as possible so that literally a kid can push a button and safely run the machine. But how do you integrate that into people's mindset about the technology itself? And that's where there's always challenges. And I would say, with all the challenges of being an entrepreneur, that might be a reward spot because I get to think creatively. How do I address this in a message? How do I talk to an industry leader over here that can't see how our businesses are related when I know they are? There's a lot of ways you can go with answering that question. Hopefully, I didn't muddy the water. That's my answer.
Oh, I love a fantastic analogy, and technology as a sandwich is going to be a favorite. The this I'm really in love with this perspective of CleanBox is a tool that supports immersive technology. And if you have that perspective, like when you're listing entertainment, schools, hospitals, how, like, what is the one thing that they all need if they're using virtual reality or immersive devices or even technology devices, honestly? You need to clean them between users.
That's
Like,
exactly right. You're
like it
absolutely
is,
right. Yes, please do that. It's hardware management because, okay,
yeah.
and we can go very simple here. You and I both know that if you put a headset on at home and you plug it into the wall, you don't have a complex set of operational protocol that you need to follow. You're one person, you're home. But the way it's used in industries, in enterprise, is not that way. It is shared. It needs to be optimized. You need to have throughput. You need to have a plan. You need to train your staff, support your content, et cetera, et cetera. Where CleanBox comes in, where it's immersive tech, where we started, and also beyond that, because we've extended past the immersive tech industry, including other industries. But really, where it comes down to is thinking with that vision and understanding, hey, there's more to this. So, a couple of things that we've done, if I can just maybe follow up with providing this information now, is we recently released the comprehensive XR hardware management guide for industry, for enterprise industry. It's a 50-page guide, no small feat. And we had more than 10 companies actively participate. Another very big feat to get people in the industry so that it's not just, hey, CleanBox is saying, here are steps that you could take as a business. This is mobile device managers. These are software solution providers, other manufacturers. How do you plan your space? How do you integrate with IT? What questions you should ask? And the goal of that document was, first of all, bring the industry together because it's a collective effort to actually build the infrastructure that makes an industry, but also do it in a way that end user, whether it be a large corporation or a small business, says somebody else has already figured out all the pain points and solved them. So therefore, investing in this immersive technology is no longer not an option.
It's no longer a risk.
It's
It's
no
no
longer a
longer
risk.
so expensive,
It's
right? Like
de-risked. It's de-risked. Yes.
the this idea that I think you and I would agree immediately that like any technology needs way more onboarding, explanation, storytelling than you often expect out the gate. And it's just a fact of being the people that make it. Like you're so much more familiar with it than anybody else is. And like to an average consumer, the attention, how much they're reading, it's so different. But this idea that enterprise, like so many innovative technologies see enterprise as their path to success. And honestly, Awesome Futures started with this idea of if you're in deep tech, you probably don't know enterprise as well as you think you do. And it was like really lovingly. And this idea that like enterprise needs not just the onboarding, right? Like not just the supporting content, but you need this back-end infrastructure. There's this whole ecosystem of support that's just expected as table stakes, and that you are bringing these 10 different experts, these actual players as examples and contributing that back to the ecosystem feels like such a gift. And as thinking back to my days as a startup, how many hours I could have saved on meetings that didn't quite go right or installations that didn't meet somebody's standards because there was a gap there. To have 10 experts weighing in, outstanding. Congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's rewarding. It's a part of the rewarding side of the business because honestly, what I have just come out of the gate, I've been in this industry now for 10 years, which is, it feels like a lifetime to me. And it actually is a lifetime. It's a whole thing. But would I be able to produce something today 10 years ago? No, because the industry was different, people's adoption was different, the needs were different. But being so close to the business and so close to all of the industries that I work with, whether they're using immersive tech or they're not, you get to really have your finger on the pulse of, okay, I wanted us to be here 5 years ago, but guess what? We're here today now. So now's the time to say, these are the best practices. Here are 10 different industry applications showing you, if you're a school and you're like, I don't know if we're quite ready to do this, here's a couple examples of universities who have. If you are whatever, you can extend that into multiple industries. And I think being able to be at the point where we're still here, still talking about how to make it work because we know how, we know the things that haven't worked and what's going to be necessary going forward. That's really the win here.
This 50-page guide seems kind of like one of my favorite topics is if you set standards, it helps industries grow and be adopted faster because there's trust, there's documentation, there's targets to be hitting. Do you have an opinion about standardization within emerging technologies?
100%. Exactly like you framed it.
Mhm.
Standardization is there to support the growth of the industry, not prevent its growth. And it is critically important for adoption. And because I do believe that, for the last 2, 3 years now, I've been working on committees at ASTM. I can tell you in 2025, we have published 2 new standards for XR hygiene through ASTM. You can go to the ASTM.org website and look for that. It's on the F2424 group. And I'm thrilled that we've done that because it's taken 3 years of efforts to do that. But when you get a standard passed, that means that you've had thousands of people look at it and give their feedback. And you can't get a standard pass if there are remaining negatives. So it forces you to talk through all of the issues and all of the challenges. And I am thrilled that we have been able to publish these 2 standards. We have a third that we expect to publish in the very near future. And I really do believe this will go a long ways to pushing the industry forward and helping everyone grow together, grow and glow together, glow up.
I love this. What's your favorite way to learn from your customers and to understand how people are using your tools and how you're impacting these really disparate but like very interesting spaces?
I try to just go ask my customers directly. And I'm involved in the sale of some kind, or it comes across in my email or whatever, it doesn't. And I find it a really interesting use case. I'll just say, hey, tell me how you're doing this and tell me why and tell me what do you think and what could be better. In the early days of CleanBox, we did pull our customers through email. But again, when we were getting emailed 7 years ago, it is very different than how many emails we get today. I don't know if they'd be as successful today the way we did it back then. But absolutely, the reason that we integrated certain things into our products was a direct result of pulling our customers. Yeah, I try and stay on top of that as much as possible.
10 years in, you're still out there asking people how it goes. Thank you. That's so cool. You've alluded to this a lot in your other answers. And I've been talking with several leaders recently, and this theme of every leader sort of has a different approach to problem solving, to conflict, to opportunity, and how they face challenges. And there's so many, like the journey isn't always straight. There's so many different kinds of decisions you have to make. So, do you have a framework or preferred way of tackling those hard business choices?
I've had to evolve my own thinking on that. And some of that has meant that, let's say I have a brand new business challenge. I've never faced it before. With an entrepreneur, that happens maybe 4 or 5 times a week. And whether it's a challenge or it's a question or something you hadn't thought of or something you're going to have to think of in the future, I've always liked to be very collaborative. And if I feel, and I do my best as well to be a generalist in terms of my own knowledge, to be very specialized in the ways that I know nobody else on my team or in my immediate surroundings is or can be, but at the same time being very much a generalist when it comes to all the broad strokes of the business. And I think that's really critical for me anyway, in terms of how I'm able to do a lot more things than I wish that I had to be able to do sometimes. But that being said, if I'm tackling an engineering question, as an example, here I'll give you a very good one. And it also is a follow on from your last question, because how do you address changes in the market and market needs? We have at least one new product that's coming out very soon that is addressing still at the XR space, but an entirely different part of the market. Now, why do we have that? First of all, we've listened to customers. We've recognized that businesses are there's not a whole lot of, let's say, middle class, if you will, in the XR space. There's either the upper echelon or there's all the startups. And there's a big gap there. And that could be a product market fit gap. That could be a price point gap. That could be a number of things that now we're at the place where we have a new product coming out. So that's one way that we're responding to that market need. Another thing, though, is how do I do that? My background is not engineering. Now, I think I have a couple of sort of honorary degrees in various technical, after a decade of doing certain things, I have those honoraries, if you will. But I need to think and tap into the resources. I know, for example, an electrical engineer will be critical to ask this set of questions. And then I will tie it to what I've already known myself. And then a mechanical engineer. And then let's talk about supply chain. Let's talk about where these components are being built now, and are there supply chain challenges, which this is a crazy world that we live in at the moment. Probably not unlike previous crazy worlds, but at least we know about it right now. It's very obviously volatile in many ways when it comes to supply chain. So how do you think about that? What are your other options? How do you anticipate a challenge that might happen a year from now based on shortages that are not there yet? And the way I try to do that is first think about what I know and think of what I don't know. And then think of all the people that might know more about what I don't know than what I do, and tap into those resources. But in the end, though, what I've really realized that no matter what decision you make, people will love you for it and they will hate you for it. You will be supported and you will be judged harshly. And it doesn't matter if it's the right decision, the quote unquote right decision, or the quote unquote wrong decision. That's life. That's business and that's life. And so in the end, I have to live with the choices and the business decisions that I make. And I have to own that every day. And it's great. It's great because whether that's good or bad, I've experienced both. And sometimes I've experienced the good and bad from decisions that were made by other people. It doesn't matter. In the end, I still have to own my decisions, their decisions. The industry changes. And so I try to tap into other people and see if they can give me guidance along the way.
That's one of the things that you hear founders and CEOs often, right? Is if you're holding on to everything, you might be holding back. And so being able to go find those advisors to,
Yes.
why, if you got an expert, why are you just leaving them on the shelf?
100%. But I also think there's a lot of value in that rub. Okay. Because you've got, and I know how to be on the creative visionary side. And I also know how to turn that side of my brain off or just mute it a little bit and go on the absolute opposite side. And I think you have to learn that if you're not so inclined. But the rub of the creative versus the practical is really important in business because it helps you get past some of those things that could be like that. Look, you could make a business decision based on not full information and not know all the little paper cuts along the way that will make you bleed to death down the road. And so allowing that headbutting, if you will, from those two kinds of sources helps you get rid of some of those sharp edges in advance.
Ooh. Yeah. There's a very Zen kind of way that I hear you approaching a lot of this, right? To be aware of the stakes and then to make the kinds of decisions that you can that you're going to feel good about waking up in the morning to it. I so love it. Amy, one of my favorite questions to ask recently is about mentors
Mm.
and how people have encouraged you along your way. Sometimes for a founder, I believe you keep going. Hearing it from anybody, whether it's a coach, a mentor, even a family member, can be transformational for that journey. Can you share a moment when the mentor or loved one helped you level up?
Sure. Yeah. I would start by first agreeing with what you just said in terms of mentorship. I think that no founder will ever really tell you how hard it is to be a founder. It is much harder than you'll probably ever get someone to tell you on camera. And it's much harder than you ever would have thought of before you started being an entrepreneur. So if you start with that perspective, you can see how invaluable mentorship or support is, whether big or small, along the way. And sometimes more people have more of it than others. For me, there have been a couple of times in the last couple of years that someone in particular who's been on my team before and continues to support from the sidelines sometimes, came to me and said, "Do you," because I was feeling very frustrated and exhausted. And he said, "Do you know how much you've actually changed and impacted the industry by what you've done? Do you realize, just take a minute and think about what you've accomplished?" And I am my own worst critic. Maybe people that don't like me might be more critical, but I'm pretty critical. I like to evaluate and judge myself. Okay, you could have done better. You could do this better next time. And it's easy to forget how much work it takes to actually make something happen. It takes a lot of work to make literally anything happen, much less a business and much less a product and much less an entire industry. So I would say that if he hadn't said that to me at that time, I was very much struggling with, "What am I doing? Why am I doing this?" And that just helped me refocus and realign and say, "Okay, you're right. That's right. I needed to take a moment and appreciate and respect the work that I've done in order for me to be able to move and do more work."
Yet, when you're so focused on an outcome, the journey can be easy to discount as just, I was going to do that anyway. But having those people who can reflect that back to us can be huge.
Yeah.
I had a friend just this week who was relaying that they were having to make some like hard choices to protect their time and to do things that felt aligned with their business. And I was like, friend, that sounds like a really good choice. Like you're having good conversations. Like,
Yeah.
good on you. Amazing.
Uh,
Amy, thank you for that. I'm hoping that you'll indulge me in a little speed round.
Okay. All right.
Amazing. So the first one, easy. If there's one takeaway that you want our listeners to get from our conversation today, what is it?
Starting something new is very hard, and being an innovator is very hard. But if you have that drive to be that innovator, it'll be harder if you don't try it.
I'm a nerd
Okay.
about strategic planning. It's the end of October. What quarter is your brain in right now?
What quarter? First of all, I just finished another 2-year performa this morning. So I'm thinking 2 years out. But in terms of this new product, I'm thinking quarters 1 and 2 of 2026.
Amazing. Ooh, thanks for that correction there. Yeah. Do you have a spicy opinion or soundbite to share?
Oh, about what? Don't get me started.
Technology, trends, or anything beyond?
I do think AI has its moment in time, but I think the changes that are coming can be very beneficial for all of us. And maybe for the entrepreneur who is struggling, or maybe they're not, maybe they're at this pivot point in their business or their life, they might want to consider using tech to their advantage. Maybe using tech to fill in some stopgap measures of areas where they think that their business is lacking. They're not quite sure how to fix it yet. Use tech to your advantage. My spicy take is that I can do a lot more with tech today than I could 3 or 4 years ago, and I am absolutely using it. One example is that if you go to our website now, which there'll be a refresh, I believe, by next week, but there's still Amy AI on there. There's an Amy AI on there. You go to the little chat bot and it has my voice. Now, sometimes it doesn't get my voice quite right. It still has that little kind of high inflection, but it'll sound like me. And you can ask Amy AI anything. You can ask it about all of the science that has to do with CleanBox, all the technology, all the products, business plans. You can ask it about strategies. You could probably try to ask about other things. It probably won't tell you anything else, but yeah, that's my spicy take. Use technology to your advantage. It's different today than 3 years ago. It's different today than it will be in 3 years. Stay on it.
Oh, love it. And bravo for leveraging your insights in a way that can help people learn from you even when you're not online. That's amazing. The
Outsource.
last one's
I'm
super-
outsourcing myself.
I outsource myself to AI, right? Like I always love those applications where like technology does the tech part and humans get to do the human part, right? And if you can give AI something to learn and repeat and share with 1 million people, that's a lot of emails you don't have to write, right?
Oh, yeah. Listen, absolutely. Let's not go back to the good old days. Sometimes they weren't as good as you might want to remember them as.
Nah, waiting for dial-up was really slow. A simple last question. How can people learn more? How can they follow up?
They can come to the website, cleanboxtech.com. I think all of our social media handles were on X, Facebook, and Instagram. It's at CleanBoxTech. That is the word clean, the word box, TECH. I'm on LinkedIn, Amy Hedrick, CleanBox Technology. You can find me out there. Look for Amy AI. And yeah, connect, please.
Amy Hedrick, CEO of CleanBox Technology. It has been such a delight to learn so much more about your entrepreneurial journey, not just in immersive technology, but also in hardware and 15 different verticals. I love to see that you're not just thinking about your work as a product, but as like a tool that enables a whole industry. And like in that tool, you're providing technology, you're providing standards, you're providing great advice for people who want to manage devices across locations. It has been such a great pleasure to catch up with you on the Tech Glow Up. Thanks so much.
It's been my pleasure. I am thrilled to be here. I'm very honored to be part of this. I've known you for a number of years and I've watched many of your interviews. And so I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for your time.
If you've made it this far in the podcast, I really appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode of the Tech Glow Up. And hey, can I ask you a favor? If you really enjoyed this episode, could you share it on your Instagram stories or maybe post the link with what you enjoyed on LinkedIn? This sort of sharing and engaging really helps small podcasters like me reach the dedicated audience that I know really cares about these kinds of conversations.